So at this point, many of you have probably heard the news, seen the article about Ubisoft and the transition that they're making over the long term, a direction that many people are not happy about, or at least are worried about, based on how Ubisoft worded things and based on Ubisoft's track record. So let's just go ahead and dive right into the article and then discuss. So the headline reads, Ubisoft says it's changing strategy to focus more on high-end free-to-play games. Assassin's Creed firm says it will no longer release 3 to 4 AAA games each year. Additional details can be found here below. Ubisoft is shifting away from its traditional strategy of releasing 3 to 4 premium AAA titles each year, but plans to launch high-end free-to-play games for all of its biggest franchises. So Assassin's Creed is obviously up there. You know, Watch Dogs is fairly popular. Far Cry is fairly popular. These are franchises that have traditionally been released as new standalone releases every year, and now it would seem as though Ubisoft has plans to take these traditionally standalone games and find a way to implement them in a free-to-play business model somehow. This was all information relayed via an earnings call, and Ubisoft's chief financial officer, Frederick Duguet, butcher that, had this to say: in line with the evolution of our high-quality lineup that is increasingly diverse, we are moving on from our prior commitment regarding releasing 3 to 4 premium AAA games per year. Now, he isn't necessarily saying there will be no AAA releases ever, just that they're not releasing AAA games at this rate. So they're scaling back on those AAA releases and trying to focus more on developing those high-end free-to-play titles. It is indeed no longer a proper indication of our value creation dynamics. For example, our expectation for Just Dance and Riders Republic are consistent with some of the industry's AAA performers. Additionally, we're building high-end free-to-play games to be trending towards AAA ambitions over the long term. This is purely financial communication evolution and doesn't change the fact that we continue to expect a high cadence of content delivery, including powerful premium and free-to-play new releases. So they're trying to have a combination of both, but in focusing on free-to-play more, they're certainly going to have to scale back on premium releases as they only have so many developers who can work on so many games. Duguay continued, in regards to this new direction Ubisoft is taking, we think that we have a great opportunity to meaningfully expand the audiences of our biggest franchises. We have taken the time to learn from what we did last year with Hyperspace, which was that free-to-play battle royale that was kind of cyberpunky in its aesthetic and Quake-like in its gameplay, but it didn't really take off. We're also learning, of course, with the launch we'll be making of Roller Champions, and we have been learning a lot with Brawlhalla, which is fast-growing. Brawlhalla being a game that Ubisoft acquired, they didn't actually internally develop that. And we think it is now the time to come with high-quality free-to-play games across all of our biggest franchises, across all platforms. But of course, it will take time before proving it in a more assertive way. That's why we want to be cautious in year one. If we're successful, that can have a very meaningful impact on the value creation of Ubisoft. Now, am I surprised that Ubisoft is going in this direction, especially after recent success stories of other free-to-play titles? No, not really. I mean, you look at games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, League of Legends, Dota 2, Team Fortress 2, Valorant, Warframe, Path of Exile, Genshin Impact, among a significant number of other titles that have gone on to do very well despite their free-to-play model. You know, Ubisoft is probably looking to get a piece of that free-to-play pie. The advantage of free-to-play being that there is no entry fee. You don't need any kind of financial commitment to download and start playing the game. Though, of course, with these free-to-play titles, the trend tends to be that they'll find ways in the experience to stall your progression or to make earning rewards frustrating or grindy, so that the only way to get some of the rewards you want will be to pay extra money. Though other games do handle it better and do genuinely find a way to make it feel more optional. And there are some free-to-play games that do find a good balance of it being a game you can play all the way through without having to pay, but also does have monetization that obviously has to be there given it is free to play and it needs to make its money back somehow. There are those titles that set the prices just right, provide some form of gameplay path at the very least, and just manage to make the microtransactions in a free-to-play game more tolerable than other games would. So I don't think free-to-play games are necessarily inherently bad, and obviously the financial prospects of a successful free-to-play game are pretty substantial considering some of these games that I listed out and the financial success that they have seen. But the fact of the matter is that over the long term, then focusing on free-to-play games means less attention towards those single-player standalone experiences that I personally tend to enjoy more and that many others tend to enjoy more. And the worry is that over the long-term future, we will see Ubisoft sort of transition more towards free-to-play and focus more on that stuff and all of the monetization opportunities there, rather than having a good mix and balance of both those standalone experiences and the multiplayer free-to-play stuff, the live services. And not to mention that Ubisoft's track record indicates that even with the single-player experiences, they monetize them quite heavily and quite egregiously. Assassin's Creed Valhalla recently faced some controversy because after the game's launch, they added additional microtransactions, and then they recently also tried to lean towards monetizing transmog. Like, there is a gameplay way to earn the currency to transmog, but they also added the option of buying the currency that you can spend on transmog. And this being a currency that is very front-loaded and becomes more limited the more you play the game. So there's a scheme there going on. So with just the single-player experiences alone, people are not enjoying how Ubisoft is monetizing. And the worry is that with free-to-play games, they're really going to go all out. And reactions that I've seen across games industry pundits have been similarly yikes-y in their nature. So we got Greg Miller here, who straight up just posted a gif of hell no after this Twitter user Shinobi602 reported on Ubisoft's strategy change. Brian Altano from IGN responded with, honestly, they could probably release more than 3 to 4 AAA games every year if every Assassin's Creed game wasn't 80 hours and the size of 3 to 4 AAA games. That's the thing, they actually could scale back their Assassin's Creed entries to be a tighter experience, and in doing so, it'll also cost less money and resources and time, and they could ship more games and still sell a good amount and make quite a bit of money. But Ubisoft wanting to make every game bigger when bigger isn't always better, and then adding those additional monetization elements that piss people off, Ubisoft have kind of been shooting themselves in the foot. You've got developers who have responded when SkillUp tweeted how, unfortunately, this is probably the direction that the games industry is headed in, more towards free-to-play and live services and recurrently monetizable business models that can generate a whole lot of money over a long period of time. Cory Barlog, the developer of God of War, the creative director of God of War, responded with, that makes me sad, or that makes me feel sad. I am sad. I am sad as well. I share in his sentiment there, personally. On the investor side of things, Benji Sales tweeted how he was listening in on the call, and honestly, investors did not sound thrilled about the direction, in my opinion. Lots of questions about or around the possible decrease in revenue from less AAA games, and if they'll be able to find enough success in free-to-play to counteract that. Shinobi602 responded, when done right, free-to-play can certainly be a moneymaker. They're obviously eyeing the success of Apex Legends, so financially I can see why they want to go that route, but it's very risky, so I understand them not being too thrilled. Definitely not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea either, and there is indeed a risk. Keep in mind, free-to-play games, because they don't have an entry fee, they don't make any money off of people wanting to play the game and starting to play the game. They make money off of people who stay for the long term and decide that they need to buy certain cosmetics or, God forbid, certain gameplay enhancing things that you can spend real money on in a pay to win fashion. That's kind of the monetization scheme there. But if your free-to-play game itself isn't compelling enough to keep people in for the long term, then it's going to fail on a massive scale. And we talk about successes like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, League, Dota, Team Fortress, Valorant, Warframe, Path of Exile, Genshin Impact, and many more. But keep in mind that amidst those, there's also a sea of free-to-play games that have failed or have not financially met expectations. Just because a game is free to play doesn't guarantee its success. Similarly, just because a game is a live service, it doesn't guarantee it'll make you a bunch of money and that it'll be a success. The game itself has to be compelling, unique. It has to be its own brand of a genre and establish itself as something that isn't just chasing a trend that's already oversaturated, but rather it has to offer something that other free-to-play experiences don't. And there lies the challenge. And whether Ubisoft is ready for that challenge, well, that's the question. I guess only time will tell. A free-to-play Assassin's Creed game could be interesting if done properly, but then you consider that with these free-to-play games, they tend to require that you are logged in online, that you stay online. And so even if there is a single-player component, you might have to log in online. That might be a requirement. And Assassin's Creed is already very heavily monetized. I can only imagine how much worse that monetization is going to be if they turn it completely free to play, and it's just going to ruin that experience when it could have been maybe single player and standalone and have been a more compelling experience. Kind of like how Marvel's Avengers, I feel, was created with a live service model for monetization purposes to monetize the Avengers IP, and it felt like a game that didn't belong in that genre and could have been much better off if they would have focused on a standalone premium AAA single player with maybe co-op elements type of experience and not gone for a loot or live service. It just feels like Ubisoft saying we're going to take all of our biggest franchises and fit them into a free-to-play mold is them trying to squeeze that in there, but maybe it doesn't necessarily fit that business model. Now, Ubisoft did respond to all of the concerns surrounding their recent statements. To various media outlets, they had this statement to provide: "Our intention is to deliver a diverse lineup of games that players will love across all platforms. We're excited to be investing more in free-to-play experiences. However, we want to clarify that this does not mean reducing our AAA offering. Our aim is to continue to deliver premium experiences to players such as Far Cry 6, Rainbow Six Quarantine, Riders Republic, and Skull and Bones, to name a few, while also expanding our free-to-play portfolio and strengthening our brands to reach even more players." I don't know, it just seems to go counter to what they said here about not wanting to ship 3 to 4 AAA titles each year. Their specific statement was moving on from our prior comment regarding releasing 3 to 4 premium AAA games per year. So they're definitely scaling back the yearly release of AAA games and perhaps sprinkling in some free-to-play, some high-end free-to-play games in there. And if they do see a whole lot of success with free-to-play from a financial perspective, who's to say that they won't lean more and more towards that? At the end of the day, these companies are focused on revenue, on profit, not necessarily the experiences people might desire. That's why EA tried to spread this narrative that live services are the way of the future for games and that people are no longer as interested in those standalone single-player experiences as they used to be, but we all know that's just straight up false. The reason they were saying that is because they wanted a future where everything's live service, everything's recurrently monetized. Because at the end of the day, despite those, standalone AAA games being usually of higher quality, they are also not as monetizable. And I feel like Ubisoft is trying to inch into that direction. And they say right now that, oh, don't worry, we're totally committed to those standalone AAA games. They say that now, but their strategies might easily shift. It'd be naive for us to just simply take their word for it that their commitment to standalone AAA experiences will continue, especially coming from Ubisoft, a company that's been known to lie. Remember when they said they would never add microtransactions and additional monetization elements to Division, only to end up doing just that? How many times have companies said they'd do one thing and commit to one thing only to shift strategies when they realize that's where the money lies? So I'm not going to just fully trust Ubisoft when they say we're not abandoning, paid AAA standalone games for the long-term future. It could happen. I'm not saying it will, but it could very well happen. I'm not saying free-to-play games don't have a place in the industry or that they can't be good. I'm just worried that Ubisoft is shifting way too much away from those standalone releases, and I fear how Ubisoft will handle those free-to-play experiences given their track record. The best I can hope for is that in the future we see a healthy mix of free-to-play and those premium AAA standalone releases. I hope they don't suddenly just go all in on that and leave the standalone experiences behind, because that would be an awful trend. I'd hate to see a future where most AAA releases are these free-to-play live service experience and the standalone experiences remain forgotten. So with all said and done, time will tell how this pans out. This is clearly more of a monetization-driven move. It's how do we fit these games into that free-to-play mold rather than do these games belong in that free-to-play mold. With that kind of mindset, you don't tend to get the most compelling of experiences, but we'll see. You know, if Ubisoft manages to create a compelling free-to-play experience that has a good balance of monetization and free-to-play gameplay, then I'll hand it to them. But for now, I'm not going to be optimistic on that front. I'm not going to hold my breath for that. But that's just one man's take on this issue. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Ubisoft's statements and their financial briefings in regards to wanting to shift away from 3 to 4 AAA standalone releases a year and try to focus more on high-end free-to-play games. Are you as worried as I am, or do you think there is some reason to be optimistic? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.